Welcome back to Yang Daily. I know I'm late. Blame Scott and Spain. They both dropped 10-ton press releases into my lap. Took forever to comb through it all. Now you're probably curious, and rightly so. I'll have mercy on you. Let's get to it. Many of you likely caught wind of Spain's big news, as the whole internet is blowing up about it. They're going to pass a permanent UBI, except that rumors of its universality may have been exaggerated severely. I eventually was pointed to an article that had details, and they aren't good. Quote, the IMV is a non-contributory Social Security benefit and articulated in coordination with the unemployment subsidy with equal guarantees so that, once the unemployment protection is exhausted, it allows the passage between both systems, always maintaining coverage. It is possible that it starts with domestic workers, caregivers of dependent people, and unemployed people who would have exhausted their right to the benefit. The self-employed who have remained on the street, even if they do not have the right to unemployment, could access it. End quote. So, yeah. This thing appears to be so complexly targeted that I can't even tell who's being targeted. It sounds like they're trying to decide who deserves it and that it will only be some extension of unemployment benefits. I don't know. It was translated from Spanish. But it seems very clear that it is very far from universal and will likely be just as dysfunctional as all the other welfare measures. Pretty big bummer. On that note, according to Ailsa Forshaw on Twitter, the Canadian Emergency Relief Benefit, while it will be in operation for 4 months, will require qualifying recipients to reapply every month to maintain it. Holy bureaucracy, Batman. If this is true, they've lost their damn minds. The Revenue Service is already overwhelmed just handling the initial volume, and they want to do it all over again every month. Instead of delaying people getting their benefits initially, they want to delay it repeatedly. This is the problem that would be encountered when making a basic income means tested. Either you only test every year, which means people can be denied based on their income from months ago, even if they currently have no income, or you test every month, which means massive bureaucratic burden for both the government and citizens, not to mention the inevitable delays and unintentional exclusions. This is why means testing is bad. Do it through taxes after the fact, when you have the benefit of hindsight and time is not a factor. Continuing the good news, a recent article detailed how millennials have half the assets that Gen X had when going into the last recession. The Twitter poster suggested we need to put millennials to work quickly, but this isn't just a problem of the crisis, nor will it be solved by producing jobs. It's a problem of steadily diminishing wealth and opportunity for Americans that has been going on for 50 years, as wages and traditional employment altogether have failed to keep up with the cost of living inflation. It has eroded savings and consumer buying power alike and threatens to plunge the entire economy into ruin if not corrected. Wages are not cutting it anymore. We need UBI. Did someone say UBI? Fire up the $ signal light. Scott Santance to the rescue. Scott and Broihier have revealed their combined comprehensive plan for economic rejiggering, and it's a doozy. What they propose is an emergency UBI of $2,000 for every U.S. resident over 18, plus $1,000 for those under 18, immediately provided monthly until 1 month after the U.S. is officially out of recession, not sure how that's going to be defined, at which point the amounts would be lowered to $1,200 for adults and $400 per child as a permanent UBI floor that's indexed to GDP per capita. This universal basic income will be funded by a new 10% flat value-added tax on all goods and services. Additional financing would come from treating the UBI as qualifying income for means-tested programs, which would reduce the total number of people qualifying for those programs. SSI and SSDI are excluded from this, fully stacking with the UBI. All safety net programs would continue to exist with fewer people requiring them, save for TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which would be eliminated as redundant. Instead of issuing $16 billion in block grants to states to provide only 22% of those they consider deserving, on average, That money would flow directly to everyone, which includes 5 out of 5 of those living in poverty instead of only 1.1 out of 5. It would also eliminate tax expenditures, otherwise known as tax credits, deductions, subsidies, and loopholes. These tax expenditures exceed $1.5 trillion every year, 17% of which flows only to the top 1%. This would include the elimination of the standard deduction, the earned income tax credit, and the home mortgage interest rate deduction, among others. You might be wondering why they chose to mess with your tax deductions. It's basically because they're redundant with UBI. The standard deduction's purpose is to recognize people have basic living expenses and set aside a certain amount of income, about $12,000 per adult, to not be taxed. Of course, this is an impossibly low amount to live on. With a tax rate of 9%, it saves you about $1,100 a year in taxes. Since UBI serves the purpose of guaranteeing basic needs, it does so far more realistically, the deduction is unnecessary. Likewise, the earned income tax credits are designed to supplement low earnings, under $15,000 for singles or $40,000 for married couples, providing between roughly $500 and $6,500 depending on the number of children. UBI already supplements income by default. The mortgage interest deduction is what allows you to avoid paying taxes on mortgage interest. This won't apply to everyone, obviously, but with the average annual mortgage interest being around $5,500 annually in the US, that would be an average savings of $500 per year. Altogether, these deductions could amount to anywhere from $2,100 for a single person with no kids to up to $9,200 for a married couple with 3 or more kids. If we further assume average household spending of around $50,000 per year and let's say $35,000 per year for a single person, then the VAT would cost between $3,500 and $5,000 annually. Granted, if you're making so little income as to qualify for an EITC, then you spend a lot less and thus would pay far less in a VAT. Altogether, an average family of 2 adults and 2 kids would pay about $7,700 more per year, so $640 per month, while gaining $38,400 per year from UBI, or $3,200 per month, for a net benefit of almost $2,600 per month. On the other hand, a single person with extremely low income, claiming the full EITC, would be on a lot of welfare, so I'll estimate spending that is subject to the VAT of no more than $5,000, meaning a total cost increase of around $215 per month, while gaining $1,200 per month from UBI, for a net gain of about $1,000. Granted, if you're making so little income as to qualify for an EITC, then a lot of your needs are covered by welfare programs, so you would spend a lot less and thus pay far less in a VAT. On the other hand, a single person with extremely low income claiming the full EITC would be on a lot of welfare programs, so I'll estimate their annual spending at no more than $15,000, meaning a total cost increase of around $300 per month while gaining $1,200 per month from UBI, for a net gain of about $900 per month. But then you'd have to subtract whatever was being received from means-tested welfare programs, which is too complex for me to calculate here, so I can't even estimate whether that person would be monetarily better off or not, and of course, it is highly situational. Though they would surely be happy enough to be freed from all the restrictions, qualifications, reporting, and applications. Going through the qualifications for the EITC alone just now was enough to make me sick of it. In addition to a permanent UBI, this plan also proposes the implementation of Federal Reserve distributed universal stimulus payments via a Fed Fund for All. The emergency UBI is to be financed directly by the United States Treasury through the coining of $1 trillion platinum coins bearing President Trump's face on one side, which the Fed will be required to purchase at face value. Pun intended. Distribution of EUBI would be handled by the IRS or SSA, whichever is faster, and people would be provided with the ability to choose direct deposits. Simultaneously, debit cards would be created for everyone, which would be distributed in a second phase as part of the introduction of personal Fed accounts and USPS banking. Additionally, The plan establishes carbon dividends, patent dividends, inheritance dividends, and a national dividend paying wealth fund that would all exist as income additional to UBI. The carbon tax would start at $40 per ton and rise at $15 per ton annually, with border carbon adjustments to encourage other nations to do the same. The revenue would be distributed on top of the UBI as an additional dividend, presumably to offset the resulting rise in prices. The patent fee and dividend would establish an annually doubling renewal fee for the maintenance of patents to discourage patent trolling and recognize temporary monopoly protections as a driver of innovation, but also an inhibitor of competition. A national sovereign wealth fund, similar to Alaska's permanent fund, would also be invoked. This fund would be created by a one-time market capitalization tax of 3% applied to all public companies to be paid upon issuance of new stock. Every year, all public companies would be required to issue another 0.5% of new stock for the fund. All mergers and acquisitions would require 3% of stock for the fund. In times of crises where bailouts are required, public companies will be required to issue 5% of stock into the fund as a condition to receive a bailout. All inheritance taxes would also be shifted to the fund in recognition that, as Thomas Paine said, man is always related to society, thus some part of all inheritance should fall to every individual in society. This plan further proposes that Social Security taxes be reduced from 6.2% to 4%. Taxes on the self-employed would be reduced from 12.4% to 8%. This reduction in taxes can be considered to offset any decrease in buying power resulting from the VAT's impact on prices. It is also proposed that the Social Security cap be lifted so that everyone pays the same into the system instead of excluding high earners. And finally, it also encourages all states and municipalities to follow Alaska's lead and introduce their own statewide and citywide benefits on top of the national UBI, utilizing their natural resources as Alaska does, as well as ideas like land value taxation in order to make sure everyone creating the value of land sees their share of that value creation, and to serve to decrease land speculation and improve land usage through increased development, which would in turn make housing more affordable. The end. Anyone still with me out there? Holy cow, that's a lot to absorb. If I'm going to be honest, and no offense to Scott or Mike, this seems like a Bernie bill. By that, I mean it seems like an idea taken to such an extreme that it can't pass Congress. In fact, this has branched out into a whole bunch of ideas that I doubt could pass. The UBI itself seems fine, and the implementation and funding for the emergency UBI are great. The problem I see with it is in trying to eliminate nearly all means-tested welfare. I think that's a bit too much of a shock for Democrats to handle, which I think was one of the big issues with Nixon's bill in the 70s. It's a big leap to get rid of the majority of welfare and substitute it with an unproven replacement. Don't get me wrong, I think it would work in practice. I just don't think it's workable as legislation. Yang's approach seems the right one to me. Start with a minimal benefit and replace just a few welfare programs. That should limit the shock and resistance from Dems while simultaneously enticing Republicans. And the UBI being opt-in and the VAT exempting staple goods ensures nobody currently on welfare could be worse off. Even that sparked ridiculous amounts of resistance from supposed progressives. I cannot imagine the reaction to this. I'm also not sure why they decided to make the VAT flat instead of progressive, with exemption of staple goods and higher rates on luxury goods, as that is, again, going to be an easy target for progressives. I guess the defense is that it's balanced out by the reduction of Social Security taxes, but that's also going to reduce the Social Security benefit proportionally, so I don't think that's going to be appeasing anyone. Then there are the dozen other dividends. The carbon tax is fine, if unrelated. Pretty clever to give that tax directly to the people to offset price hikes, actually. But the patent dividend, stock fund, land tax, and inheritance tax reforms, I mean, I don't disagree with any of them, but if you wanted to make sure that every power in the land united to block your bill, you could not ask for better incentive than this. There is no chance in hell those are going through. Maybe if you introduce them one at a time after UBI has proven successful and public sentiment shifts toward seeing the universal benefit of money properly recycling through an economy, maybe you could get it done. But I absolutely would not throw any of that in with a proposal of UBI. It's just going to taint UBI by association. Look, I'm not an expert in politics or on any of this, so take everything I say with skepticism, but I just don't know what they were thinking in releasing all of this together. It seems like political suicide, but maybe that's just me. It's an impressive collection for sure, and it's got Scott's fingerprints all over it. Moving on, we will soon have a new UBI caucus member in Jared Anderson. He is running for Congress in Utah's 3rd District. Jared currently supports an opt-in $1,000 per adult UBI to replace all welfare and potentially funded by some combination of a 15% VAT, a wealth tax, minor deficit spending, and offshore banking regulation. His positions on this are not yet set and will likely shift over time. I've been discussing the details with him and he's still evolving on the issue, hopefully particularly on replacing all welfare or else at least the amount that he's replacing it with. Other issues of focus for Jared are education, healthcare, climate change, housing, labor laws, racism, and restoration of indigenous lands to their tribes. You can find details on Jared and support him through the website link below. UBI caucus member David Kim will be hosting a virtual UBI town hall this Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific via Facebook with special guests Scott Santons, Conrad Shaw, and Stacy Rutland. Don't miss that much intellect and humanity packed into one discussion. Give Directly has posted testimonials from 30 of the individuals who received their $1,000 cash assistance, telling how they spent the money. If you're interested, you can find them at the link below. Finally, Humanity Forward has elected interim board members to lead the movement's volunteering and grassroots organizing efforts for the next 6 weeks. Congratulations to Gianmarco, Stacia Yim, Eileen Patterson, Tom Jeffrey, Tab Dayani, and Lewis Black. Thank you for stepping up and leading us into the future. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Check out Jared and consider supporting him. Give Scott and Broihier your feedback on their new plan. Put a notice in your calendar for the UBI Town Hall this Saturday. Get your taxes filed and your direct deposit set up pronto so you can get your $1,200. Consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, or United Way if you need help. Call and write Trump, Pelosi, McConnell, Graham, Dean, and Schumer why true UBI stimulus is the best solution. Use ResistBot or Income Movement to easily contact all your representatives. Consider what we can do to push the movement forward in this critical moment and discuss with others at the local hubs in the support links. And don't forget to Yang Daily.